Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Politics Now. We're talking about modern politics in modern America. And today, we're going to be looking at what a potential 2024 election map might look like. And yeah, let's just get into it. So, 2024 is looking like it's going to be a pretty close election. And in all the swing states, none of them are looking like they're going to go either way by a vast majority. Even some of these more likely states for either side, they also look like they are going to be a tough time to actually win. Places like New Hampshire, Virginia, Maine at large, or even North Carolina. These are going to be very competitive spaces, even though they lean more towards the Republicans or Democrats than a lot of these swing states, like all of these Midwestern states, Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia. So it's going to be tight. And right now, looking at the polls, they are not looking too good for either side. And right now, Trump is up, and Biden and Trump have sort of been in a tough fight for the past entire campaign, and they have been fighting over the polls. Most of the time, the best that they can ever get is maybe around 2.5 points above each other, but most of the time they are practically dead even. And right now, Trump is up. He's up by around a point, and Trump he does he doesn't do that well in the polls usually. So Trump being up is a bigger win for Trump than it is for Biden, because Trump being up in the polls, that's a massive win considering how Trump isn't usually up in the polls for a while. And 2016, he won that election and he was pretty much never up in the polls. He was up for maybe 2 weeks and he was up zero point 0.2 points, but it really didn't last that while. And when election day came around, he was still down 7 points, but he still won that. So 2020 comes along and he is never up. And Biden is up 7 points during election day. And Biden struggles to win a lot of these swing states. And they are decided by under a point margins. So Trump being up in the polls isn't necessarily a requirement for Trump. Biden being up in the polls, it is a requirement, because if Biden isn't up in the polls, you're going to see a lot of these states lean a lot more Republican. We're talking states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona. All of these states over here are going to be more Republican if Trump is up during election day. And if those polls actually reflect the popular vote and just general trends, because winning the general election polls is usually going to determine who wins the popular vote. So if Trump is up and he maintains his consistency of being up and beating Biden in these polls, well, Trump has a shot at actually winning the popular vote for the Republicans for the first time since 2004. So Trump winning the popular vote is going to make winning a lot of these states a lot easier. And that would be an even bigger defeat for Biden, because you lost the popular vote as a Democrat for the first time in 20 years. So that would be a pretty big embarrassment for Biden. And Trump winning that, that would be a massive win for him. And if Trump could win that, you are going to see a lot of these swing states become even easier for Trump to win. And adding to that, despite Trump being up in the polls, Biden also has to deal with a lot of other people, and he needs to deal with the Green Party and the No Labels. Those are going to be the major spoilers who are going to affect his votes in places like Michigan, Georgia, Nevada, Arizona. All these places, they are going to steal a lot of votes away from him. Green Party, they're putting out a pretty popular candidate within the Green Party, and he has a lot of appeals. So they're definitely going to be stealing a lot of votes from him. And he pulls as high as 10% or 7% in a lot of these polls. So if he gets around maybe 5% even, he's going to be stealing a ton of votes away from Biden. And you're going to see places like Michigan become more Republican when they would otherwise lean more Democrat in just a normal year without third parties. And you also need to worry about the no labels, because the no labels are definitely more left leaning than right leaning, and they're definitely going to be more appealing to Biden voters who necessarily don't really want to vote for Biden, because there are a lot of Democrats that don't like Biden. And if somebody like Bernie Sanders were to run as a third party, which that is a real possibility, or RFK Jr., if they ran as a third party, that would be a even bigger blow, because he needs to deal with the Green parties and the no labels already. But throwing in a major third party candidate, that is also going to completely shake up the race, and it's going to make it even harder for Biden, because Biden, he's already in for a tough time, because he's not exactly like, and he's polling really bad considering how he's an incumbent president, and he's dealing with the same third parties that screwed over Hillary in 2016 and caused Trump to win states like Michigan, Wisconsin, even Pennsylvania. So you're going to have these spoilers, and in terms of Trump with the spoilers, the major spoiler for the Republicans are going to be the Libertarians. And just looking at all the candidates that are coming up, and a lot of the major ones that have an actual chance of winning the nomination, yeah, none of these people are ever going to get more than maybe 3% of the vote, if that. That would be their best day, because a lot of these people, they do not have enough appeal to steal a major amount of votes. These aren't Cornel West of the Libertarian Party, because Cornel West, he has a lot of appeal. A lot of these other people in the Libertarian Party, they just don't. They don't have enough appeal, and the people who do have enough appeal, they're going to lean more left, and they're going to steal a lot more votes from Biden than Trump. So he gets to deal with that too if they even win. So now you have three parties that Biden's going to need to deal with, and he's also going to have to make sure that all these other candidates like Bernie or RFK Jr. don't step into the race and completely screw him over. So Trump right now, he seems to have a lot more advantages when it comes to winning a lot of these swing states, because Biden has so many disadvantages that it's making it really hard for him to even have a chance at winning, because dealing with a ton of third parties, the potential of major candidates running as independents, and just general disappointment in your handling of the country, and the fact that he's very old and it shows. So imagine a debate that he has with Trump, because that would be a complete and utter joke and an embarrassment, which would drop him in the polls. So you're going to have to hide him in the basement or do something, because you're going up against a lot of people who are going to steal a lot of votes away from you. So you're going to need to pull out something major in order to have any chance of winning. And Trump right now, he's pulling out all the stops. He's pulling out all the 2016 strategies, and it seems to be working. I mean, you don't run a ineffective campaign while you're beating Biden in the polls when you normally don't do anywhere close to that in the any other poll, even when you win. So Trump, he has the current advantage right now, and we're going to be basing our prediction just on that. And we're going to be going through all the states. We're going to start with Wisconsin, and we're going to end with Nevada. So yeah, let's get into that. So Wisconsin, yeah, it's a more Republican leaning state, and it's trending to the right a lot more. You have the shifts in the state where that white working class vote is becoming more and more representative of the state, and they tend to vote Republican. And you're seeing the same thing happen with in places like Ohio or even Florida, where you're having that white working class base build up and build up. So they're going to make the state go farther and farther to the right. And just given those trends, Trump is probably going to win Wisconsin. And it's probably going to be the most safe Republican state out of all these swing states. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy to win. It's just saying Trump has a much better chance than Biden of winning Wisconsin. And Michigan, we have. So Michigan is a very weird case, because normally it would probably lean more towards Biden because it does vote Republican sometimes, but it also has the fact that you have a ton of major Democrat strongholds there, and normally the state just leans more to the left than all these other swing states. So it's going to be a lot harder on an average year for a Republican to win there. But this isn't an average year because Biden, he is very disapproved of, and he has to deal with all these third parties, which, if you factor in the third parties and you factor in the fact that Biden is so disapproved of, Trump is actually beating him in the polls in Michigan. So just looking at that and just looking at all these factors going against Biden, I think it might narrowly, like 2020 Arizona margins, go Republican. This is going to be the probably the tightest race in the entire 2024 election, but just given all these factors, I think Trump has a shot at winning the state. Not by a lot, but by very, very, very narrow margins. So Michigan goes Republican, and it goes Republican by a thread of the hair. So now we got Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, it is a very weird case where it can definitely go Republican. You just need to turn out your voters. And Trump, he's offering a strategy to turn out a massive amount of voters. And Pennsylvania, it's got that trend where it's kind of going left, but it also kind of goes right. So it's straight in the middle where it can vote for John Fetterman, but it can also vote for Trump. And it all depends on who can turn out the most voters for their party. And Trump, on a presidential year, he usually can turn out more Republican voters than the Democrats can turn out. And you had 2020 where it was the ultimate display of what happens in Pennsylvania when he isn't able to turn out those voters. And 2020 Trump, he was not able to turn out his voters and he lost the state. But now it's seeming like a lot of voters from Pennsylvania and a lot of Trump voters from Pennsylvania are going to turn out, and he has enough appeal that he can possibly turn them out. So if he turns those people out and they vote for the Republicans and vote for Trump, he has a pretty decent shot at winning the state, far more than Biden, because Biden, he kind of used his Delaware appeal and kind of just transferred it to Pennsylvania. And he's like, Delaware and Pennsylvania, they're close enough. I got some appeal there. But that's not going to work anymore. And you are so disapproved in the state that it honestly is not shocking that Trump is beating you in the Pennsylvania polls whenever they publish a new poll. So, just given that, I'm going to mark the state as going to Trump. It's probably going to be more Michigan margins than Wisconsin margins, but it still will go Republican in the end of the day. But now we got Georgia. Georgia is a sad sight to see because the Georgia suburbs are moving the state farther and farther to the left. And I think this might be the last election that Trump or any Republican has really any possibility of flipping the state back to the Republicans. And you have the fact that it keeps going farther and farther to the left, and Atlanta just keeps cementing its control over the state, where you have a ton of rural voters, but they're just not enough to counteract the more left leaning people who are in these Atlanta suburbs and are moving to there in droves. These are people from California who are liberals, and they're leaving the state and they're moving to Atlanta and making the state more and more Democrat. So yeah, it's just a sad sight to see, but I'm gonna have to mark it for the Democrats and specifically for Joe Biden because it's just given those trends and given the fact that Atlanta keeps moving to the left, it's going to be harder and harder for any Republican to win the state from now on, and it's just going to be lost forever at one point. So Trump could possibly win it, but just given the circumstances right now, it doesn't seem likely. And now we got Arizona. Arizona, it used to be pretty Republican and used to be one of their more safe states. Now it's been trending farther to the left and has made it a swing state. It's kind of like how Virginia was a lot more Republican until it became a lot more Democrat, and now it's kind of going back to the Republicans. That's kind of the same thing that's happening in Arizona. It was more Republican, went more Democrat, and is kind of going back to the Republicans. And you have that Senate seat where you have an independent senator who is going to steal a lot of votes away from the Democrats, and you could definitely win that state and win that Senate, but the Senate seat, winning that is probably a lot more likely. Winning the state in the general election, not as likely, and because of that, I'm going to put it as the Democrats winning it. And Joe Biden, he'll probably win it by very narrow margins, kind of like how he won it in 2020. But yeah, honestly, when it comes to Arizona, the Senate seat, it is up for grabs, but the state itself, just given the trends there and the fact that Republicans are definitely losing a lot of control of Arizona, and a lot of the major cities and a lot of the more southern border regions are turning more and more blue. I'm gonna have to call it for the Democrats. I mean, it it's just too far gone at this point that it could be won by the Republicans. Definitely a lot more than Georgia, but still, it's too blue to actually have any effect. So let's go on to Nevada as our final state. Nevada is a state that has a pretty similar situation to Wisconsin. It was a former blue stronghold that it has been moving farther and farther to the right as the major cities, which once dominated pretty much all the electoral polls and controlled the state, kind of like how Atlanta controls Georgia or Minneapolis controls Minnesota. It was one of those states, but they have lost a ton of control as the state has moved farther and farther to the right. So a lot of the state now votes Republican now, and same story with Wisconsin. And just given the trends there, and given the fact that Joe Biden is going to be facing a lot of disadvantages that are not going to help him at all in the state, I think Trump could definitely flip the state to his side, and the Republicans could definitely win the state. Not by a lot, but definitely by more Wisconsin margins than Pennsylvania or Michigan margins. Because Nevada, it's been moving farther to the right, and Republicans have an easier shot at winning the state than places like Michigan or Georgia or Pennsylvania. And just given that, it's probably going to go Republican, but it's still going to be a pretty close call. So we got the final totals 285 to 253. Pretty close election, kind of on par with 2000 or 2004, which were very close elections. But yeah, it's going to be a close one. But just looking at the polls and looking at the trends right now, Trump currently has the advantage, and he probably won't win Michigan. I mean, it's like a 50-50 split whether or not it goes red or blue, but I'm going to call it for red. And even without that, Trump only really needs Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nevada, and then he's got his 270. Even if I called Michigan for the Democrats, where I just say, oh yeah, it's probably going to flip blue, Trump still has his 270 and he wins. So he doesn't really even need Michigan, which is probably the least stable state in terms of the Republicans here. So Trump, he probably has a better chance of winning the presidency than Joe Biden, but it's not exactly a vast majority better chance because, again, partisanship and the fact that, it's Trump we're talking about, so he's not exactly going to walk out with a landslide. He might, but it's not very likely. So this is probably the most likely scenario. Maybe Michigan might flip blue. That might be even more likely, but this map I could definitely see happening. And just, yeah. So if you think Trump will win, yeah, or if you think that he'll have an even greater win, leave them in the comments below. If you think Joe Biden will win, leave them in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.